Hi guys, Tap here, hope you're all keeping well. As promised, a quick video on the spec of my Taycan. And it's an interesting time now if you're in the waitlist for one of these cars, because there are quite a few people pulling out, so there's some build slots coming up rather unexpectedly. And of course, if you get a build slot, you've got to make sure that config is locked in. Now, I was umming and ahhing about the config pretty much right up until the build slot lockdown for config. And yeah, you've got to ensure that you've got it right. And now I've lived with the car for a bit, are there potentially any things that I would have changed or done differently? Well, yeah, I want to discuss that in this video. The next thing to note is the shape of the car. Now, this is obviously the saloon variant, but of course you also have the Sport Turismo and the Cross Turismo. Now, when I was looking at this, pretty much the only thing that was available in a reasonable-ish build time frame was the saloon, and the Cross Turismo and Sport Turismo were only kind of just coming along. So I opted for the saloon. Now, in hindsight, I'd have probably gone differently. Now, you have the Cross Turismo, which is jacked up, more for off-road, has plastic trim around the wheels. And then, of course, you have the Sport Turismo, which is basically the funky estate-type version of this car, which I think looks amazing. Cross Turismo and Sport Turismo do look very similar, but the Sport Turismo is, of course, just that little bit sportier. And I love that shape of car. And now I've seen them out and about on the road and spoken to quite a few people about them, I really do think that is the one to get. It's a great looking car, really has an awful lot of road presence. I love it for that, really do. So that is the first point. I'd probably have gone for the Sport Turismo, but this is great. The saloon I still think looks good. I want to do a separate video on that because it's quite an interesting topic. It's a bit Marmite, that how does it look kind of conversation. But next up, the model variant. So this is obviously the Turbo S. I do like my fast cars. Is it the best bang for buck? No, it's not. I did another video, I'll put a link in the description. I did the analysis, so you don't have to, about which represents the best value for money, and it is the 4S. The Turbo S is, you know, you've got to spend a lot to get this performance, but obviously coming from a 570S, I wanted something with a lot of poke, a lot of go, and great handling, and this absolutely ticks that box. So they've done a really good job with the Turbo S. Such a cool car, and as I say, the more I drive it, the more I enjoy it. So first things to talk about, which you can kind of select, I guess, is the colour, right? And there's no right or wrong answer, just get one you like here. Of course, there's plenty of variety out there, and I've gone for Volcano Grey, which is of course a grey colour. I tend to get all my cars in grey. For me, this is a bit dark though. Ideally, I would probably go something like Arctic Grey. Alas, it's not available on the Taycan. To get it, you have to go paint to sample, which is about a £6,500 option. And honestly, you're kind of just throwing that money away because you don't really get it back. And you have to choose carefully if you're getting paint to sample, because it can really narrow your resale market when you come to sell it. In that, if you go for something like mint green, I'm not so sure as many people will be interested in that as perhaps one of the Nardo Greys or the Grigiers or something a bit more, I guess, safe is probably the right word there. But absolutely, just go for one you like. If you really want paint to sample, go for it, but consider that 6,000 or so pounds that you're never going to get back, because options tend not to have resale value. And just to note, there are so many options available for the Taycan, and to do an exhaustive video on them will probably be 10 videos and might even fill up the YouTube servers completely. So I'm just focusing on my spec for the purposes of this video, why I made the choices I did. So we've ticked the colour off, that's grey. The seats, I've gone for standard black leather interior. Now, this is one of the things I was arming and eyeing about right up until the last minute in that config lock. And I was originally going to go for two-tone and maybe something a bit more interesting like slate grey, but once I saw the other colour options in the dealer in person, they looked very different from the configurator. So I just went for the safe black, which isn't actually black, I think, from what I can see. It's kind of it's not a jet black, right? Really dark black. It's a bit lighter. Maybe it's got a grey hue to it. Now, I am colourblind, so if it looks different to you, forgive me. But I think it works really well, and of course, it is again a safe bet for that resale value. Next up, this option is a little bit crazy. It is the Carbon Sport Design package option that I went for in this car. And here's the thing about this. yes, it is expensive, and I probably won't get the value back on this when I come to sell it. Indeed, Taycans aren't looking that good at the moment anyway in terms of depreciation. Unfortunate times, but may change. But yeah, the carbon sport design package, which changes that front apron a little bit and gives you, of course, carbon trim, which I'll show you in a cutaway part of the video. But here's the thing about Taycans, right? They all look, let's just take the saloon, forget the Turismo variants. They all look so similar, whether it's the GTS, the 4S, the base Taycan, the Turbo S. There's no real differences between the body shape at all. They all look very similar. Of course, different wheels, right? And then different calipers that you get with the different models. But it's not like a 911, which really does start to change whether you've got a 2S, a 4S, or a Turbo, with those nice air scoops at the side. They all look so similar, so I wanted to get something that would kind of set it apart a little bit. And the carbon design package really does, in my eyes. It gives you that little bit of extra width around that rear skirt above that diffuser. It just looks very cool indeed. So for me, that was, yeah, probably a bit extravagant, but a fun option nevertheless. And I do think it looks great, so no regrets there. The next option on the list is, of course, the folding mirrors. Well, you've kind of got to, really, for those tight spaces. The Taycan is a very wide car. It's hideously wide. I think it seems like it's about 2 miles wide, so you're a little bit limited in terms of where you can park it sometimes, and if you've got to go through bollards that are width restricted, it isn't ideal, but it is a wide car. So folding mirrors, of course, is standard. Next up, I went for the LED door logo courtesy lights. It wasn't too expensive as an option and looks pretty cool in my eyes, so that was an option to tick. And of course the ambient lighting package that came along with that as well. You don't get to change, obviously, any of the transmission settings. It is basically just an electric car, right? So that's all that you have to consider here. You just buy it and you get what you're given, kind of thing. So no real changes there. Next up, I went for the PDCC, which is the Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control. And the reason I went for that is because I wanted something that was as rigid around the corners as possible. And this actively controls body roll to keep the car as level as possible. And I have to say, the handling of this car, for a 2.3 ton car, the way it changes direction with the rear wheel steering as well, is absolutely insane. I really think they've done just a fabulous job. It's great, it's really good, and the chuckability of this car, I can't get my head around it sometimes. I guess it's what Porsche do very well, and they've certainly exemplified that in this car without any doubt whatsoever. So PDCC is an option I would definitely recommend as well. Next up, the wheels. So looking at the wheels, I went for the 21-inch Mission E wheels, which are great. I'm not a fan of the two-tone Mission E wheels where you have the rim of the wheel painted in the body colour, so I went for Satin Platinum, which is kind of a matte grey silver colour, which I think looks stunning. Provided it's against the right body colour of car, it really does look great. So for me, I just think it works really well, and they're fabulous looking wheels. That design with those twin spokes, really cool wheel. Next up, I went for the Porsche logo on the rear in black, so it's a little bit more murdered out. You can get blue variants of that. You can get blue tints on the lights at the front, which I think look very cool, and maybe I'd have gone for those just to give the car a little bit more interest, because it's very grey and very dark. The yellow calipers obviously setting it off a little bit there. For example, the rear logo, I think that would look quite cool if that was in a colour that matched those calipers. So yeah, you can get anything done though, provided you pay the money. I'm pretty sure Porsche will do that for you, so fill your boots in that respect. Here's one I would change. So I got park assist with the surround view, which is great. The rear camera isn't fantastic, but there is another option, which is remote park, and it has the 3D surround view. So that's the one where you have an out of car, out of body experience, and you can see the car from actually as if you were outside it, which is great for if you are parking in very tight spots. Because I have to be honest, when you're looking at the camera here, and you're getting close to something, the scale is a little bit strange, the definition isn't always good, and you're not quite sure if you might just prang something or not. So that external view with remote park, the ability for the car to park itself, is probably one I would go for. It's a little bit more expensive, but worth it. Now here's the thing, you could get the 3D view on the normal surround view using a hack on the previous software version by clicking in a certain space on the screen, but they removed that on a new update. Thanks, Porsche. So yeah, something to bear in mind there. Now here's the other great option, is the cruise control. Yes, the adaptive cruise control. It is a godsend if you're stuck in traffic. Adaptive cruise control is phenomenal. It offers you the distance control, of course, collision warning, all that good stuff that comes. You see that front radar sensor on the car if you get this, but it is a really, really valuable option. And as I say, when you're stuck in traffic, stop-start traffic, it's so good. Because, you know, even if you have a tendency sometimes to be in traffic, I've certainly done it before, where your mind drifts a little bit or something catches your eye, the car in front has stopped and you leave it a bit last minute. It obviously takes care of all that for you. So it's just an extra safety level, and I would recommend getting that. The seat belts, of course, are red, and that matches the clock on the dash. I also got the red Sports Chrono clock just to kind of tie in a little bit there and match, which I think looks pretty good. And then the last bit to talk about here is the passenger LCD display, which honestly I've never used. Has Hannah used it? No, it's really just for show, but it looks cool, right? I think it looks cool, and it's a nice little thing to have in what would be a pretty boring area of the dash, to be fair. So yeah, it's a bit extravagant. It's a £790 option there or thereabouts, so not too bananas, but yeah, it's just for show. But the configuration options you have available when you're putting a Porsche together are eye-watering, and sometimes the easiest thing to do is just to close your laptop and do a bit of a cry, get yourself together and start again, because there is so much you can change and you can configure on a Porsche configurator. So have a few options, have a few goes at it, is what I would say. Have a few different types of configs that you're interested in, start to narrow it down, pros and cons, what's really going to work for you, what you can afford to have. And here's the thing we should really finish on here, which is quite important, certainly from my perspective, and that is that you don't really get, I do need to say, I did not get the pano roof. It's not on my options list. The pano roof now is available in two flavors, straight pano roof or the LCD one, which will actually black itself out at different levels, which is a £3,000 option, £1,000 or so for the standard one. That is something you might want to consider. I just don't like them. For me, it's a bit too people carrier, a bit too SUV style, so I just went for the normal roof. But yeah, what I meant to say there before I cut my own self off, if I can do that, is that you don't get your money back on options. You don't tend to get your money back on options, right? So just bear that in mind when you're coming to select your car. There's about £10,000 worth of options here on this car, which is probably about average for a Porsche, I'd say. I mean, you can go crazy if you're specking up a 911 or a 718 GT4 RS with Vice-Arc package or something like that. You can literally go bananas. But yeah, £10,000 is pretty reasonable. The Turbo S is very well spec'd, I have to say. So yeah, just a bit of food for thought. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it helped you out. Do stay safe, stay well. See you on the next one. Bye for now.